Hiya, it's Kirsty. Today I wanted to talk about my lower moments with my suffering with OCD. So kind of what I would consider my rock bottom moments, so then the lower moments that came up as I went through my recovery journey. What I would like to say is that while it felt like it sometimes in the moment, none of my setbacks that I had as I went through my journey ever took me to feeling the way I did at kind of square one when my OCD was at its worst, before I sought proper treatment for it. What I did find was that those low moments felt low, relatively speaking. So they would have felt worse perhaps if I'd have had a particularly good period and it would have taken me by surprise. I think that's sometimes why sometimes it feels like in the moment it feels really, really bad. Then when you look back at it, it's like, actually, no, I definitely wasn't as bad as I had been 6 months ago. But in the moment I felt bad. And I think a big part of that is the disappointment of feeling like it might be a setback, and also the disappointment of having had some progress and then felt bad again and being worried that you wouldn't be able to maintain that progress. My very lowest point with my mental health was when my OCD became very severe, and the theme at the time that kind of got me to that point was ROCD, relationship OCD. I'd never heard of it. I didn't know what real OCD was. I thought it was all about cleaning and light switches and things. I just knew that I didn't want to end my relationship, but I knew that I couldn't stop having these thoughts, and I'd never heard of anything like that. I had a vague knowledge of kind of relationship anxiety, but this felt back to front to me. It was kind of me being afraid of, I can't stop having these thoughts, even though I don't want to end a relationship. I can't stop having these thoughts. And I think what actually kind of enhanced all of it was the fact that I was about to go away for 5 days to be a bridesmaid for one of my best friend's weddings. So the extra pressure I was putting on myself to make sure I could get to sleep and stop panicking, that I think made it worse, because then it was sort of the fear of fear as well. I actually recently found kind of an old sort of notebook from around about that time when I was trying to do some CBT on myself and treating it like a worry journal or something at the time. And the concerns were that I would be panicking while I was supposed to be a bridesmaid and I'd ruin my friend's wedding or something. So the stories in my mind were going over and over. The last day before at work, before we went away, I took off work just to go to the doctors and speak to them to try and work out if there was anything I could do. I was prescribed diazepam and sleeping tablets just to help me out while I was away, and then some medication for anxiety for when I got back to start taking. But the trip itself, there were some beautiful moments, being one of my best friend's wedding, absolutely. But being somebody in the early stages of ROCD, very extreme at a wedding, naturally it felt like it was very painful. There were moments that were very painful. And I would just look at my boyfriend and my heart would break, because I didn't want to lose him, but I didn't know what was happening to me. I would describe one of the overruling feelings at the time as being completely agitated. That's maybe is an understatement actually, but I just couldn't find any peace. The thoughts wouldn't stop. I had quite a lot to drink over that time away, that 5 days, as everyone there did. And it was almost like it actually, it helped for a moment, and then, then it all came back to me. I just felt so guilty as well. I felt guilty because I dragged my boyfriend there, and, I'm having all these thoughts and feelings, and he deserves better, and I didn't want to ruin his time, and I didn't want to ruin my friend's time. I was very, very tired. I was taking strong sleeping pills to help me at night time. But when I returned, I went into work. People were asking me questions because it was a busy period and I couldn't cope. I had to speak to my boss, and I got a note and I was signed off for 3 weeks. I started taking my medication that day, and as people who have taken medication will know, initially it can kind of enhance those feelings, but that period was definitely my rock bottom. I couldn't sleep. Every time I was trying to fall asleep, I would just the image of my partner would pop into my head and it would jolt me. I didn't want to think about him or hear him breathing or even anything, because I was desperate to get to sleep, because I thought, if I can get to sleep, then at least tomorrow I might be in a better place to feel a bit better. But if I keep thinking about this and I can't get to sleep, then it's just going to get even worse. And I just kind of, the cycle, it was just becoming so much bigger and bigger in my mind. And the same with my appetite, which I'd completely lost. I thought, well, I need to be able to have some energy. I need to be able to eat, because, how am I going to try and make myself better to make this all go away? But of course that's again, it's like, it just makes it even worse. But I wasn't able to keep much food down, so I was constantly going to the toilet. I couldn't sit still. I just sort of constantly having to fiddle with something. That was my absolute rock bottom, that period. The medication did start to kick in within a week or so, and gradually some of the physical anxiety calmed a little bit, and I was able to have a little bit more sleep and get my appetite back, which helped. And in that period, I tried, even though I wasn't at work, I needed to build back my strength to get back to work. But I am somebody who benefits massively from structure in my day, and I think OCD thrives on a lack of structure. So I was practicing mindfulness meditations, which I overdid it on, but I was intermittently throughout the day. I did that. I wouldn't recommend doing it as much as I did. I did start, when I started being able to eat a bit more, I did some very light exercise. So I would do some light yoga, and I would try and pop to my local leisure centre and just have a very, very gentle swim and a sauna and steam room. And while I was doing that, I still felt really horrible, but I think it must have helped me at the time, having that structure to my day. And then in my last week off work, because I had 3, I started to try and do some more housework again. So start getting a bit more involved in doing the washing and preparing some food for my partner and I. And at this point, I just felt so guilty for, like, I'd confess some of the thoughts to my partner. I was asking him for reassurance. So it really added to it, the guilt towards him as well. I did start to do some CBT, which I've spoken about in another video. Well, actually, it was psychodynamic therapy. So a combination of that and my medication did help me get to a point when I was going to work, and I was starting to meet up with my friends again, and I started to feel a bit better, better enough to book a holiday, which was 3 months after my OCD hit and got really bad. And there were moments on the holiday at the start and at the end where it was harder, but we had a nice time together, despite I was still very much in the throes of OCD. But my next biggest low point came shortly after I came back from the holiday, as I was entering a very busy period at work, which had been previously a bit of a trigger for anxiety for me anyway, just because of the sort of rushing around at work and not looking after myself enough. Then the OCD got very, very bad again. I was pacing around at lunchtimes, sort of Googling for reassurance, and I was crying in the toilet. I'd read about acceptance and commitment therapy, about how if you sing your thoughts in a song in your head, it can help take the edge off. So I was kind of compulsively doing that while I was at work, just to try and ease it. That was an incredibly difficult period. I practiced some of the things I'd read about leaving the thoughts there, and it did ease off a tiny bit, but not huge amounts. It was when I was no longer seeing any further progress from the psychodynamic therapy that I started to look around other treatments for OCD. But I was feeling quite helpless at this point. I was feeling like I wasn't going to be able to, mine was different. Mine was one of the incurable types of OCD, if even it was that at the time. After I started working with Rob with OCD Recovery UK, I saw some huge progress in my recovery and some huge shifts with my OCD from several aspects of working with Rob and OCD Recovery. It was the group support, learning about the acceptance piece, looking at it in a different way to what I had done before, and it was amazing seeing that progress. But then, of course, anybody on the OCD recovery journey knows it's not linear, it's up and down. So as I started to see some progress after doing certain exposures, my OCD started to cling to recovery, after having had some glimpse of what relief might feel like. And I had a dip again when I was starting to feel hopeless again, because I couldn't then stop thinking about being scared of going back to square one again. That became the fear then, like responding to the thoughts and not being able to stop that mental loop. I remember a particular day in the park. It was a beautiful day. And I was the thoughts were bouncing. I was like, oh my God, I've got to stop thinking, because otherwise it's going to get worse again. And it's going to be really dangerous for me. I'm going to go back to square one. That was a very low point for me, but persistence with working on recovery, not trying to force it, that was a revelation for me at the time. And then I found myself entering back into a better period again. And then a couple of months after buying my house with my partner, I had a really bad dip. And interestingly enough, this did coincide with my work becoming very busy and stressful again on the run up to Christmas. At that time, I think that was 2 years ago. But I remember sitting at the dinner table with this feeling in the pit of my stomach. I can't keep going on like this. That's how I felt in the moment. And I was doubting how far I'd come in recovery. It was like logically, I knew that I'd recovered. And if I'd recovered up to a certain point, then I knew I could go further. But in that moment, because OCD making you doubt everything, I just couldn't stop doubting that. It was, I felt like I'd just been going on at this sort of feeling as awful as the beginning all the way along in that moment. And I just felt like I had lead in my stomach. Everything felt like such a huge effort. So I in the end, with that, it was again just taking it day by day, just get through tomorrow, get through the next day, and then gradually sort of leaving it there, still working on disputing beliefs. Gradually it lifted again and I went for a better period. And that's kind of been how my recovery journey has gone. It's been feeling a bit better, discovering something new, learning sort of new skills to help me, seeing some progress, and then going for a bad phase and it feeling really bad in the moment and doubting your recovery and doubting that you'll ever recover. Maybe even doubting the work you've done, if you've been doing enough, everything. And then working your way through those periods, and you come back out of it again stronger, although it doesn't always feel like it at the time. But after enough of those dips, you do start to realise when you're in a dip, I will come out of this because I have done before, and you do start to believe it a bit more, which really helps, and the dips don't feel quite as awful as they did in those early stages. Something that has really helped me when I've been in those lowest of low moments is reminding myself of what I'd been through previously in my life. And this doesn't compare to what some people had been through, but relatively speaking, in my life, the loss of my mum to cancer when I was 25, it was a shock learning that she had terminal cancer. It was pancreatic cancer, which is an extremely painful and fast-growing cancer, which is not easily detectable in the early stages because it doesn't start showing as many symptoms until later on. But knowing that 6 years prior I'd gone through that, and that I had supported my mum through her illness, mentally, like supportive because we were best friends essentially, but also looking after her physically when she needed as well, when she was having chemotherapy, and in her last couple of weeks when she was bedbound, to know that I was able to show that level of strength back then. I knew that I would be doing myself and almost my mum a disservice. Not that I made myself feel guilty, but I'd be doing us both a disservice if I didn't muster all the strength that I needed to push through and to do the things that scared me, and to make the best of the life that I do have, because my mum isn't here to enjoy her life. And I knew how proud she was of me when she was around, and that also I could use that to boost me and give me strength. And also my mum had lost her mum when she was 20, and she had she'd gone for a very difficult time with that loss of her mum, who had suffered from alcoholism, her mother. My mum was obviously very young when she was witnessing that. So again, it was kind of mustering all of that strength, knowing that if I could get through that difficult period of seeing my mum in pain and seeing her frightened and ill, and seeing my dad suffering that much and my brother suffering that much, and feeling that fear and not knowing what was going to happen myself, what it was going to look like, I thought, well, okay, then I can push through and do what I need to do to help myself live my life the best way I can do, regardless of what mental health difficulties I might be suffering from. So there's nothing good that I can take from losing my mum, aside from the extra strength and resilience that it gave me, and I think gave me the extra grit and maybe a little bit of the extra acceptance, the ability to accept certain things maybe a little bit easier, because I had to accept something as difficult as losing my mum, who was my best friend and just an all-round amazing woman. But to summarise, in those lowest moments, most difficult ones, you've just got to persevere, because life at the other side is really, really worth it. Even if there is still OCD there and thoughts and feelings, we're lucky to be here, and life is worth it. And it's just about, on those very, very dark days, putting one foot in front of the other and remembering that you made it through last week and you'll make it through this week. And I hope that this video can help people feel a little bit less alone if they're really suffering at the moment, and know that there are better days to come. And Rob has quoted Winston Churchill previously, and I absolutely adore this quote because it's so relevant. He said, "If you're going through hell, keep going," and it's so true. That's the choice. That's the only choice. Just to keep pushing through those dark days, because amongst 5 dark days there will be a brighter one, and then in a month's time you might find a couple of brighter ones. But it's just to don't let OCD take more than it's already taken from your life. The more you start taking back from OCD, the more OCD will very, very, very gradually start backing off. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope it has been of some help to somebody.